Hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are today. Um, we're very excited to have you all here, and we are definitely looking forward to a groundbreaking event that promises to redefine the future of member experiences. We are thrilled to present to you the virtual symposium titled Smart Engagement, Predicting How AI Will Enhance Member Experiences. In an era marked by technological leaps, the convergence of artificial intelligence and engagement strategies has opened new doors of possibility. Today, we gather to delve into the transformative potential of AI in revolutionizing member interactions, reimagining the way we connect, serve, and empower our communities. Throughout the next hour, we will embark on an enlightening journey exploring how AI's predictive capabilities can deeply impact member experiences, from overseeing personalized engagement trends to optimizing content delivery. This event is designed to be an eye-opener into the future of community engagement and the member management industry as a whole. Our distinguished panel of speakers, each an authority in their respective fields, will guide us through this exploration. Their expertise spans the realms of AI, technology, community engagement, and membership management, ensuring a comprehensive and enriching discourse. As we move forward, be prepared to gain insights into cutting-edge strategies, witness real-world success stories, and engage in thought-provoking discussions. The possibilities are boundless, and the outcomes of this event have the potential to reshape how we engage our members, fostering deeper connections and more meaningful experiences. So now, without further ado, let us introduce to you our esteemed speakers who will unravel the mysteries of AI-enhanced member experiences. Get ready to be inspired, enlightened, invigorated by their expertise. Thank you all very much for joining us today. The future of smart engagement starts now. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce Rich Brady, who is the CEO of the American Society of Military Comptrollers. Also with us today, we have John Killingham, who is the co-founder and CEO of Yearly. Christina Llewellyn, who is the Executive Director of Association of Technology Leaders in Independent Schools. We have Eric Schmidt, who is the CEO and co-founder of GlueUp, who will be our moderator for today. And lastly, we have Mrs. Nikki Walker, who is MCI's Global Vice President. Speakers, welcome. Thank you all very much again. And now I will pass it over to Eric, who will initiate the conversation. Thank you very much. Eric, over to you.
Great, thanks, Ralph, and welcome everybody who's joined us this morning, afternoon, whatever time it may be in your part of the world. Obviously, a hot topic these days across the entire world, and certainly, especially in the space that we live in, which is technology, is how AI is going to impact that. And certainly, AI is being built in order to create more efficiencies and better products. Today, we have a panel, and of course, people across the industry of associations, chambers of commerce, member-based organizations, and how it's going to impact some of the things that we are seeing and how members' experience will be impacted as we look forward. I'm actually here in Salt Lake City today, just finishing up the American Chamber of Commerce Executives Annual Conference. And again, similar topics throughout the day. People are having the same questions about how is AI going to impact some of the work, but also how is it going to enhance some of the work that are, in this case, the chambers are doing across the United States. So let's give a quick welcome to our panelists. I'm going to ask them just to briefly introduce themselves and their organization, so everybody has some context about where they're coming from and their role in the organizations. And then we'll go ahead and get started with the panel. Why don't we start with Christina, since she is on my top left here on my screen.
Thank you, Eric, and hello, everybody. Thanks for your time today. And That was quite an intro. So I hope that we live up to that, fellow panelists. But I come from the association management background, and that's been most of my career. I am the executive director of Atlas, which is the Association of Technology Leaders in Independent Schools. So most of my members are CIOs and their tech teams at not on the public sector side, but in private collegiate prep type schools, independent schools. And so, as you could probably imagine, our folks, rather than just locking down AI and saying no thank you, they've been pretty quick to embrace it and try to step into it and try to figure it out. So I join you today both as someone who has served membership with AI resources and really having to be on top of it fairly quickly, but also I run a small staff association, and we leverage the heck out of AI to make us more efficient and more productive.
Great, thanks. Josh, welcome.
Thanks, Eric. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Yearly. My name is Josh Kligman. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, and we're a platform for associations, nonprofits, and foundations to create digital reports like annual reports and impact and donor reports. And we're seeing AI really come into play in our business as organizations are looking for faster ways to create the reports. So we work also with independent and private schools, K through 12 and higher ed, and then as you'd imagine, associations and foundations across a variety of industries. So it's an exciting and new space.
Absolutely. Rich, welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric. I'm delighted to be here today with Josh and Nikki and Christina to talk about AI and its applications in the association space with members. So as mentioned in the intros, I'm with the American Society of Military Comptrollers. I'm the CEO here. I'm relatively new to the association space. I retired about 2 years ago after 32 years in the Marine Corps. So I'm new to the association management space, but spent 30 years as an association member, and the American Society of Military Comptrollers was one of my professional associations. We've got about 14,000 members in the defense financial management space. That's both on the government side, primarily the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and the intelligence community, and on the private sector side, mostly in the audit, advisory, and consulting space. So think Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, Grant Thornton, the bigs and the smalls in the government contracting space that provide financial management support for national security agencies, and increasingly IT companies as we're working financial systems integration, modernization, auditability, that type of work. Also, I am this year the chair of the board of directors of the Institute of Management Accountants, which is another professional association of finance and accounting people who work in the private sector. They've got about 140,000 members across about 150 countries worldwide. So a bit larger than ASMC, but interestingly enough, both organizations were, really at this starting point with our adoption and use of AI, and just trying to figure out exactly where does it fit in for us. So we're definitely not early adopters, as I was called, but we're definitely exploring the space.
And finally, Nikki.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, good morning, everybody. Great to join you. I'm in Chicago, having just arrived in the US about 36 hours ago on a whistle-stop tour from New York to DC and now Chicago. So great to be with you all. I'm MCI's Global Vice President of Engagement, Associations and Communities, and I lead our global business and everything that we do for associations around the world, basically from the Americas right over to Asia Pacific. And unlike you, Rich, I've been working in the association space for more than 30 years. It's completely in my DNA. I live, think, eat, dream, breathe associations, and we work 50%, more than 50% of our business is helping professional and trade associations. And of course, engagement is absolutely the buzzword. Recently, we as MCI rebranded ourselves as an engagement and marketing agency. So moving away from that traditional association management or, meetings company, because engagement is so important. So it's a space that we believe very much in. I will talk a little bit about some of the findings from our association engagement index as we go through the conversation around the adoption of AI, but I'm happy to be here on this panel with you all.
Great. And we look forward to hearing some of those findings. And just a little housekeeping item for all of our attendees. Again, this discussion is meant to be engaging with you all. So I do encourage, as we're having this discussion, if you do have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or the Q&A box. We will get it. We might not answer all the questions right away, but we will try to cycle through the questions as much as we can. I know that a lot of people have a lot of questions in this space, and we're certainly looking forward to a very engaging discussion. To sort of preface, where AI is for Glue Up, and for the folks who are, maybe a little bit less familiar, with us and what we're doing. We are a community engagement CRM system, and working with associations and chambers across the world with our 12 offices. Our headquarters is in McLean, Virginia. And we work with almost 1,500 associations and chambers of commerce and member-based organizations across the world to provide them the technology that they need in order to run their member engagement programs and everything to keep in touch with people for running their events and email campaigns, as well as, of course, their basic CRM needs. But again, as a technology company, there's always challenges that every organization is looking at now, and how that's going to impact what they are doing. We look at it as, how are we going to impact the member experience, and how are we going to help improve how organizations are looking at that engagement with their members, and certainly with their attendees, but also people within the community, because it's not just a member interaction that's important, but everybody who interacts with that organization. So we'll start with Christina. And my first question is as you think about the member experience and just the community experience for you all, how are you thinking about this shift for your members, and certainly how they are looking at it as a potential benefit for them?
Well, certainly, I think that it did bring together a community, because just like when we were going through the pandemic, it kind of snuck up on us. Obviously, AI and generative AI has been stepping into its own over decades, but many of us just weren't really paying attention to it, other than maybe click all the crosswalks in the picture in order to log into something. That was obviously us training AI and AI training us, but I don't think many of us were paying attention to it until ChatGPT really exploded onto the scene. And right away, we had to figure out, was this cheating? And I think a lot of educators turned to our technology teams and our thought leaders in the tech space to say, what in the world is this? How do I handle it? What do I do with it? And, when we first started talking about ChatGPT, it, was definitely back in the era of it could not pass the bar exam. And then like a month later, it did. So I think that we were seeing how quickly it was moving. Our community came together and immediately started sharing resources around academic integrity. So I think, I don't want to speak for all schools in a broad stroke, but I think that roughly speaking, a lot of public schools were like, nope, time out, lock it down. We're not doing this yet. We need time. Where I think a lot of independent schools were a little more open-minded, because we tend to want to step into things like that and teach students how to use it and how to work with it rather than to ban it. And so our teachers were nervous, especially certain subject matter teachers were a little nervous about English teachers. Is this going to write the paper? But it became apparent quickly that it was discernible, and that we were going to have to kind of embrace it or not. It was being integrated into a lot of the technologies that our students will be using. So instead, we came together as a community and started looking at things like resources that we could use. How do we cite generative AI in a term paper? And how do we provide teachers with resources so they understand how they can kind of outline those academic integrity expectations and it up front, rather than waiting for it to happen to them, because it was gonna for sure have happen and have somebody handing in something. So the cool thing is, I think that where our community fell was that, because ChatGPT was the generative AI that we all kind of went, oh, I get it. I can put a little prompt in there and then it spits out whatever it spits out, like right in front of your very eyes, it opened the door to these conversations where previously it was like, something very far off and something very sci-fi that not a lot of folks could kind of wrap their brains around. ChatGPT made the conversation around AI very accessible and for everyone. And so, we saw that our tech leaders really were able to step into a leadership role and help everybody just take a breath. At the same time, understand the implications and the privacy issues. We don't want to be putting spreadsheets of student data into AI and telling it to create seating charts because, then that data is in there. So we also had to make sure that we were, cautioning our community as we went. So on the member side, I will just, wrap by saying because there's a whole different conversation on the staffing side and the association side, but on the member facing side, we just leaned in and we walked hand in hand with our members to figure this out to the tune where at our annual conference, we added a pre-conference workshop. This was in April. So ChatGPT, end of the year, everybody came back from the holiday break in the first of the year. And so our conference was in April. We had a pre-con workshop that sold out immediately. And we had to add one at the tail end of our conference. So we repeated the content, rinse and repeat. And we did a second showing of the AI workshop at the end of our conference, also full house. And then we ended up doing some virtual programming through the summer, which, final kind of fun note about that, we didn't just have us, the technology leaders, the educators talking about AI. We had students presenting to our community, very impressive young adults who came and said, well, here's how we would use it. And here's how we could advance our own learning with it. So it's pretty cool how the community came together in our world to look at it.
Great. And actually, you mentioned one key word, which I really like, is it was made accessible, which, again, a lot of technologies are not always accessible to, the general person who, may not know and understand technology. So key aspect of, what you just mentioned. Rich, as you think about it in the organizations you're involved with, certainly, accounting and numbers is not something that ChatGPT and some of the AI tools are necessarily known for today. But how are you all thinking about that as you look at the future of your organizations?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Erica. Great question. And I think, first of all, Christina said it best that, some of this did really sneak up on us. And it was really incredible how quickly the system learned and escalated up. She mentioned, I think, the bar exam within our own space. Chat GPT 3.5 was not able to pass the uniform CPA exam, but about 6 weeks later, GPT 4 did. And so, you can kind of look at this from two perspectives. One is the business perspective, what we do every day in the association space to, run our businesses, to create business plans and business processes. And the other is what's it doing to the profession and where's the intersection between those two. From a profession standpoint, you're right. I think that there is a little bit of hedging going on right now. There's somewhat of a risk aversion, like what is this? How much can you trust the data? Let's start leaning a little bit, but let's not go all in on it just yet. But as we look at the accounting and finance profession, when I came into it 30 plus years ago, the standard role of an accountant or financial manager was the capturing, recording, and reporting of financial information. Well, we largely have systems that do that for us now. So the role of finance and accounting professionals has been changing and evolving to one where we are engaged in more higher value added activities like data analysis, data visualizations, data narratives. And this is an area where ChatGPT or generative AI can truly augment the experts in the field. I don't like to call it artificial intelligence because I don't think it's nearly there yet. I still think it's augmented and really within within our realm, within accounting and finance, or even within the national defense area, we always like to keep, as we say, a human in the loop. And so, you can take a look at the output of, this generative AI, but somebody always needs to be, doing the quality control and check on it to make sure that that the information is valid, that it hasn't made up information out of thin air or references, all of those type of things. So that's kind of what's going on in the profession from a business perspective. I mean, similarly, we're taking a look at, where across our association, whether it's membership, certification, education, marketing, advertising, where this can be used. And I would say, as I look across all areas, it can be used to varying degrees. A lot of opportunity, obviously, in the membership space, and how we design, develop, and implement products and services for our members, whether they're education events, certifications, professional development opportunities, just across the board. There are a lot of opportunities here. So we're, as I mentioned earlier, we're really kind of at the early stages, but very optimistic about what it can do for us. Now, I'll tell you from both sides, though, from both the business side and the profession side, there is somewhat of a concern of, is this going to take away my job? And, I look at it kind of from a different perspective, and that is, how can this enhance my job? How can this help me reimagine my job, reframe what I'm doing to, again, create more value, either for my customers, if I'm working on the private sector side in the profession, or for my members, if I'm working in the association space.
And Rich, if you don't mind, let me throw a follow-up question to you there, because I think this is important for many trade associations where there are professions that have a potential impact to be completely impacted by AI. How are you guys putting together a task force? How are you guys doing that within your industry to look at the potential impacts on the profession?
Yeah, so we're again just kind of starting out, since this is really relatively new. We're holding an event. I mean, our association, ASMC, holding an event here this fall, a data analytics decision support virtual conference that's going to be solely focused on AI in the defense financial management sector. So that for us is kind of really the first step, so we can start having some of these conversations about use cases, where the opportunities are. And again, I don't want to underestimate the risk, because we're still really early on in this. And as a professional association, our mission is really threefold. I probably should have started with that. Number one, it's to promote education, training, and certification of the defense financial management workforce. Two, to help drive financial transformation in the defense sector, which is what we're talking about here. And three, to uphold the highest ethical and professional standards. And we can never forget, because there are a lot of ethical questions surrounding the use of generative AI. And so, that is going to be a central focus of our discussions here this fall.
That's great. Nikki, you mentioned, you guys have, as MCI, have been doing a lot of work in this space, trying to understand engagement as a whole, and certainly its impact across the globe with what MCI does. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about some of your findings.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start by saying also, I think, like all things technology, AI is not the magical solution to engagement. Technology is an enabler. It's a very useful and important enabler. But, and just building a little bit on what Rich said, it's very important to think of generative AI as an intelligent assistant. And everything you do towards engagement and every use of technology needs a strategy, needs an intelligent human brain deciding why you're trying to do something and what the outcome is. And absolutely, Rich, I fully agree with you. If we're thinking of anything to do with AI, there needs to be that intelligent human that's using this intelligent assistant, to bring us to the best outcomes. But one of the key things, so we launched our the findings from our association engagement index at the beginning of this year. And there were really three key findings that came out of that. Kind of, what are the 3 C's of engagement? And this was responses from some 13,000 members and customers of 51 associations in 118 countries. So it was a very robust view, not from us, not from the association executives, but from the members and customers of our associations. And they were saying clearly, you know, we want sort of three things moving forward. Choice of channels, so online and offline engagement. And very clear finding was more customization. Help us get there quicker. Help us find the content and all the rich products and programs that you've got in your association, but help us, the member, get there quicker. So the personalization, the customization of the member experience, the finding of the content, all of the programs, etc. There's a huge role here where AI can help us go faster and again, used properly. So customizing the member experience. And I was prepping, I'm doing a panel on this at ASAE next week, and I was talking with my co-presenters. And kind of the buzzword now inside associations, we've been very resistant to following corporate trends, right? You know, because corporates have followed us because we've had loyalty of members and they've seen our business model of associations as something to emulate. But they've gone way ahead of us in customizing the experience. So what we're kind of talking about with AI now is like, you know, give your members the Netflix experience because that's what they're expecting, you know, pushing out, using those generative and personalized access, the learning preferences, the predictive analysis to, you know, if somebody's interested in this particular content, you know, help them find the rest that you've got about that particular subject or topic. So definitely a very helpful, which we are all at the beginning of you know, really discovering the strength. And of course that technology is going to evolve. So a very helpful assistant to our association work and engagement, definitely.
Absolutely. And actually, Josh, I'm going to give you our first question here that has come up from one of our attendees, which is, are there examples of staff skill building or specific tools aside from ChatGPT staff are using to enhance their work context? We are looking not only at how AI can help our systems and help us deliver more efficient services to our members, but what kinds of skills staff need to have in order to sustain their skills and opportunities. He read an article that suggested in the near future, people's jobs won't be replaced by AI, but they will be replaced by people with AI skills.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing in my business. And as we're developing AI that we want to use for our customers that want to do things like create reports and use storytelling in a way that becomes faster in terms of creating the content, you need people to help steward that forward, to train and explain it. And then what comes after that? Well, I mean, for me, it's more customers. And then with more customers comes more jobs too, and then more training around the AI that supports all that. So that comes into play with customer success and customer service when we're trying to help associations and nonprofits learn how they can use AI within the tools to do things faster, like communicate out with members and various stakeholders. So I think that using AI to help improve communication and retention with members is something that I like to focus on. For instance, you know, how can organizations use artificial intelligence to update, say, community members on happenings within an industry or an organization and then save time while doing it? So that kind of pairs well with this question that came up because you know, you'll need staff to help support that and run that after you have the AI set up. I don't think that the idea though of AI and figuring out exactly how to use it has to fall on the association industry. Leave it to the tech teams to find out what that demand is and talk to them about that, and then lean on that technology. So for instance, right now you can go to a tool like ChatGPT in its current form and just sit down and figure out, all right, well, what can I do to have this help with my business? you may have to put in questions in different ways, and those prompts that you're putting in may give you different results at different times, depending on, slight variations in how you ask the question or give the task. I think the job of the technology companies is to figure out how they can help associations get guided towards the right prompts or specific prompts that take care of certain tasks, so that you have the outcomes faster and you don't have to sit around and judge whether or not the questions you were asking ChatGPT are really giving you the answers that you need. That's what can help things like creating, from what I see, creating impact reports or annual reports that members would end up seeing about how you're telling the story behind the numbers. Or we talked about, Rich, I think it was you, data visualization. How can you create visuals like that really, really fast? Well, that kind of AI and tech could be built into tools that can spit out that information really easily. And I like that Nikki brought up customization, because that's all I've been working on in the last month, is figuring out how, say, every single member could get a completely different update or a report that all tells a similar but different story from everybody else. But the name's different, the visuals are different, but you're not spending any more time creating things like reports thanks to AI. We're working on that type of automation and launching it. So I'm in the thick of it, trying to figure out the pitfalls and what people need. And it's all new, but it's exciting if you can really help someone move faster.
Absolutely. And there's an example from Catherine Dill, who mentioned new tools like AI, Microsoft incorporating Copilot into Excel, Word, PowerPoint, which, again, we all learned how to use these tools in one particular way. And now with Copilot, we're going to need some retraining on how to learn how to use them more efficiently. And can we get things done faster? It's going to impact that daily work that everybody's doing. So, obviously, Microsoft is a leader right now, and certainly with the tools that we all use every day to do our work. So we'll all be learning new skills. And I think the one thing again, as we're looking across what people are asking, is specific, and maybe Christina, we'll go back to you. Are there specific examples of AI in association membership, whether that's increasing membership or increasing meeting attendance? Obviously, you put on a session on AI and people show up, right? So maybe you sold more tickets, right. But that's probably the basic. Yeah. But what else are you thinking about?
Well, I think that there's certainly some organizations are already jumping into creating chatbots and AI overlays to their specific worlds, their communities, right? That are more locked down, more private. We're not quite in that headspace yet. I'd like to kind of see where that goes, because, sort of like Josh mentioned, sometimes you need to leave this advancement to the tech people, the true tech companies, and kind of see where they fall out, because the demand and where the market goes is where the technology will go usually. So I'm a little more reticent to kind of jump into like massive uses of it. But what I will say is that as a less resourced staff that makes a lot of use of technology to do great things, we've been really quick to jump into it from a productivity standpoint. And I won't rehash, we just like many of your organizations, I'm sure, we spent some time as a team looking at prompt engineering and how to get better at that. So we just, rather during like staff meetings and virtual huddles and stuff, rather than spending time talking about the what of what we do, we often spend time talking about the how we do it. And so AI has been a dominant part of our conversation in recent months. One example that I can give you that's like a hard and fast, oh yeah, that was great kind of example, was that we had a bunch of, from our earlier days, we knew we had this archive of content that was maybe a little outdated, but still incredibly useful. Like, let's say developing a technology budget, for your department, right? And so we would have this old content that wasn't necessarily front and center in our kind of presentation of content to our members. But what my team did was they would take old recordings, get a transcript of it, right? And dump the transcript into AI, into ChatGPT, and say, summarize this. And it was just like literally like a 4-minute project, right? And so then we had these summaries. Now, could we post those summaries as is? Absolutely not. It needs the human touch, right? It needs the rich version, which is like at least a human has to evaluate it. But it just sped everything up to the point where I remember one week, I spoke with my team early in the week, and just a few days later, we had 38 new articles on the site for our members ready to go in the back end, to the point where I was like, wait, what? What is all this stuff? Where did it come from? And it came from our old stuff that was in the back of the proverbial closet, not being viewed by anyone. So I think upcycling content and recycling content can be something that we can use. And I think that while every organization is a little bit different, I really love that my team is creative about how to use it, how to find efficiencies in it, and then they share with each other. So I have the kind of culture at my organization where, again, we spend more time talking about how we do our work rather than what we're doing. Like report out is a waste of time. We have project management software for that. So when we get together, we talk about how to work more efficiently, and the idea is flowing from my team. It's just pretty stunning what they're making this thing do. They're bending it to their will and coming out with evil outcomes, right? But I do think that in terms of measuring it, we're still kind of in that process of figuring all of that out. But I think that, from the internal side of things, there's a lot of benefit there. I imagine we're going to use it a lot in our upcoming live events. Like, how can we make the ripple effect of live events go deeper and wider? I would imagine that we'll use a lot of AI in that space too.
Absolutely. Nikki, what are your thoughts here? For examples.
Yeah, just building a little bit on, both what Christina and Josh were saying, and specifically, with regards to membership and customization. One of the wonderful things about ChatGPT is exactly the speed that you were talking about, Christina. But when you think of members and you think of personas, and again, it comes back to this intelligent use and helping AI becoming an intelligent assistant to yourself, is playing around with your different member personas or your different personas within your community, so that personalization going out to members, if you're doing like a member recruitment campaign, or you're doing a member renewal campaign, start training your ChatGPT to different personas. And so you have a very segmented approach. It was exactly what Josh was saying. You're saving time being able to get out those personalized messages according to, the age, the gender, the level of interest, whatever your data has been telling you that people are interested in. So you can really make that simple, what in the past has been one of the most boring, bland administrative type emails. Hey, your membership is up for renewal, please join us again for another year, without really coming back to what their interests are. So, and it's, as Christina was saying, you have to train. It's not just prompt engineering and all the rest, but you've got to spend that time. And Christina, I loved what you were describing. I think this is particularly, your team is working on this. You've got to experiment and play. And find out what's working, what's not working. But the saving of time is where a lot of associations, a lot of us are at right now, is seeing how we can do these things more efficiently, more effectively, and not knowing the answers until you've experimented or tried it out. So it's a great way of personalizing simple messages, or as you've just done with your content, again, recycling that content and then making it easier for members to find.
Yeah, and to clarify, like a piece that's popping up in the chat is that we're not integrating it into our stuff, into our technology, because I don't want to be on the leading edge of that due to my size. I would rather have large organizations with a lot more money than me figure that out, skin their knees, and then I'll keep an eye on it. I'm paying very close attention to whether consumers and members think it's cool or just kind of cheesy. So I'm watching both consumer brands and large associations. That is my strategy. So I'm very aware of it. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not pulling it into my current platforms because I want to see what the other folks do on their experimentation dime. And then once it's vetted out a little bit, and once our members speak to us in terms of how they consume information and whether or not those experiences are valuable to them, then I'll be happy to jump in on somebody's coattails.
Yeah, but that's amazing because that's really forward thinking. I mean, just that idea of, all the experimentation, which is where it starts. So other people are probably going to copy what you're doing. So I think that's great.
Well, and this also brings into, and again, I know we have a couple people asking that question about affordability, right? Associations don't necessarily have the largest budgets compared to a corporation who might put an R&D team to go and figure out, what are we going to do? How are we going to use it? And how is that going to impact the organization? And, Christina's point, learning from the mistakes that they're going to make is obviously a key one. What do you guys think about the affordability? That this is a common question. Again, we talked about accessibility at the beginning with what Christina mentioned, and again, another aspect here is affordability. How are you guys evaluating that? Rich, maybe.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that, thank you, Eric, because we are addressing, and quite frankly, some of this low-level experimentation doesn't cost a lot. I mean, you can go in, I think Chat GPT 3.5 is free, and 4.0 is like $20 a month. So we're not talking really a lot of money here. Nonetheless, you do have to, and for us, one of our biggest challenges right now is, balancing it with other priorities. We are in the middle of association management system upgrade. And so we are, it's about a year and a half long process to implement, design, develop, and implement a new association management system. And so to a certain extent, until we've got that, and we've got a new and probably better data set that we can use, some of this that we're talking about, like the member segmentation and developing personalized content, is going to have to wait. That doesn't mean that we can't do some of the other things that have been talked about as well, just creating content from what we already have and new content very quickly. When you hear about just what's been done, even in the last 6 months since this technology has really been commercially available, you can see how, I think it was Goldman Sachs came up with their estimate that this has the potential to raise global GDP by 7%, because of again, how productive it can make people. And just to give kind of two examples that we have used, and again, not really not costing a lot of money here. We're a chapter-based organization, so we've got about 105 chapters, and we've got a chapter handbook, which was recently rewritten. It's about 80 to 100 pages, where you can easily put that into ChatGPT and have it create a table of contents for you, and within minutes. Something that would normally take days is done in minutes, and you have somebody QC it, and you move on to the next thing. Again, that's a very simple example, a low level or not highly technical example, but it's something that can be done right now very easily that would impact any organization. At a little bit higher level, we rely on volunteers to help us create exam content. So we've got a certification, and we are going through the process right now, the job task analysis and new exam blueprint, and writing new items. And the company that we are working with to develop the content, we're talking about the use of AI in developing initial set of exam multiple choice questions. And that's led to some further discussions about when is it most appropriate and how would you do it. You're still going to need the volunteers to do the quality control, go through it and everything, but it does increase their productivity. But I'll give you an example. We talked about where it could be very useful and help us create exam content that would not need a lot of human intervention to QC, and that's in the area of fiscal law. Fiscal law is driven by probably 4 or 5 key regulations out there: the GAO's Red Book, the Department of Defense Financial Management Regulations, and some OMB circulars, and some other Comptroller General decisions. So you bundle that all together, and you have generative AI create 150, 200 question bank for you. Give that to your volunteers. They've got a starting point, so they're not starting from nothing. They're starting from some actual exam content that they can use. Now, that is going to cost a little bit more, but again, you can just see the potential for this, not only enhancing your operations, but the ability of your volunteers to do their job and make them more productive.
Eric, I'll jump in there. That's okay. Go ahead. I think Rich is right that it's pretty affordable. I think that that's in terms of the hard costs. I see the cost savings as is really incredible because of the speed that, like Rich was alluding to, that people can move at. So I see that in the form of, in the future of content creation, in my small world of people making reports, right? You have to sit down and think about the stories that you want to tell members and board members and various stakeholders, right? Like partners in the community, about how you're moving the needle and what you're doing. And, that story creation, in my experience, just takes a long time to think about, well, what are the programs you want to talk about? What are those stories that you want to do? And then when you get to the part of writing it, that's a whole nother piece that I think AI can help move faster. So I think that the more organizations can save time, they're moving on to the next thing. So I think that's where you see a huge cost savings. And I noticed another question that popped up about what skills are considered AI skills. If AI can do the application, does the person taking on that role just manage it for errors and stuff like that? I mean, yes, but you're learning about those prompts and you're learning how you can tell the stories. And then there certainly would be errors. I mean, I think the content creation that we're trying to develop gives you a big head start. You can't walk away from it and say, all right, I wrote that and it's done. You want to make sure it's in the right voice of your brand, which is a whole nother conversation, and the right tone. And then, there's this famous case in the US that just came about where an attorney was in court and they were arguing a case. And what did the judge notice? That one of the citations was wrong. It turns out the briefing was from, an AI developed piece of text, and it's an AI can do citations, but the citation was from something that was fictional and never existed, if I'm remembering that correctly. This was just a few weeks ago. So you can trust it on the whole, but you got to check your work. And that's kind of one of the pitfalls that can slow you down. It's just something we'll have to get used to, I guess.
Absolutely. And that's a good segue into the next part of this discussion, which is actually, in terms of the law, the ethics, and where the industry going, where is the industry going in terms of the guardrails that people want to put on it. Nikki, maybe, since you spend a lot of time in Europe tends to come very hard with regulations. GDPR was obviously the first, and data privacy, and certainly has now impacted regulations everywhere else. Where do you see regulations headed, and what are some of the things from an industry perspective you think people need to evaluate inside their associations?
Yeah, I saw the questions coming in with this regard. And I think, one of the key things that we've been advising, and in a number of panels I've spoken on in AI, because as Rich said earlier, this thing has gone so fast, we're all suddenly talking about it and we're all learning from each other as we go. But a couple of months ago, I was in a discussion, and very clear advice to organizations to make sure that you have an ethical statement about your use of AI and be transparent about it. So if your association hasn't developed that, definitely advise you to do that, because it needs to be transparent. And Josh has just cited a classic example of something that has been cited very quickly by AI and doesn't have truth. And this comes back to what we were saying before. Everything needs to be used intelligently. You must have your staff, your human, your volunteers, whoever it is, checking out what the generative AI has helped us create so quickly, but there always has to be that quality control. So an ethical statement and a policy inside your association of how you're using AI, whether that's with your staff internally and with operations, or Rich, I liked a lot of your examples there about enhancing committee work and task force work. And remember also, we're learning, but so are our members, and they are learning in their professions, in their own jobs. Christina, your opening comments, you blended very much the technology and the members and the lifestyle of the two coming together. So some of our members and customers have been using AI in their professional life very much on a daily basis. So, but you need to be transparent, and you definitely need an ethical statement as an associate, as any organization, but we would advise that from an association point of view.
Absolutely. Christina, maybe you want to talk a little bit, obviously education it is the hot topic as it relates to, AI's impact on the industry, how teachers view it and whatnot. How are you guys getting involved, and where do you think regulation might step in the future here?
Nikki, I appreciate that you kind of pointed out the ethical statement for the association. I hadn't really thought about that because my head's been in the space of the education, which is we're getting our members together, we're bringing together the community to talk about responsible use and ethical academic integrity policies, and every school is going to be a little bit different. I've definitely seen on some ends of the spectrum, educators are leaning into it and saying, okay, here's my assignment. I want you to put the prompt into ChatGPT, and anything that it spits out, you're not allowed to use. Like, that's your starting point, right? Sometimes we're finding ways to just reference information that's coming out, like use it just like another resource, and you have to cite it in an appropriate way in order to kind of meet that threshold of integrity. But somewhere in the chat, somebody said something about accessibility and equity issues, and I'll just mention that that's a big part of where some of our conversations are, because in our early days of kind of talking about this, we would say, well, if a student parents can afford a tutor, how is that any different than a student who cannot afford a tutor and is leveraging generative AI to support his, her, or their efforts? So I feel like those conversations often were initially stopping people in their tracks, and they were forced to kind of think through, well, yeah, I guess a tutor isn't cheating. This is a free tutor. And it creates some incredible opportunity in terms of present this prompt at the next grade level down. Teachers are using it rewrite this assignment that is more accessible for those for whom English is their second language. So it's really incredible the way that it's being used. And I think that we're just kind of focusing on supporting our community more so than we were thinking about it from the association perspective. But it's coming a long way. And I think that like anything, educators just need a hot minute to get used to it and understand what's going on with it. And then if they're shown examples of where it can be beneficial, that's great. Regulatory wise, what we're just keeping an eye on is, of course, student data privacy. And student data privacy is under the broad umbrella of data privacy. So there are, kind of what I consider a tsunami of state legislation coming our way in terms of what we have to do to be responsible for other humans' data. But there's also this incredible manifesto. It's a little off topic, but I think relevant to us as association and membership group leaders. UNICEF has a manifesto. You can easily find it on the internet. And it's around privacy, and it's for children, and it's written for governments and corporations. But I think that there's something we should all take to heart here, which is they're children, we're adults. So until they can figure out, how to protect their own data, we have to be responsible stewards of their data. I think that goes for us as association leaders too. Like, we can't expect our members to be on top of all this, but we have a responsibility to make responsible decisions in terms of data. And that means don't feed the beast anything that's confidential. I guess one of my questions for Rich, I would be concerned when your idea about item writing, it's incredible, but then are you worried that your content, you have to feed the beast in order for it to give you items, right? So do you have any concern about that? Because I went, ooh, I wonder, would I do that? Would I put my content in there? I don't know.
Yeah, so can I address that, Eric? That's a great question.
Go ahead. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
So that is an issue we address with the company that we're working at, and what they have is a closed system where they are able to, they basically pull what's publicly available into their closed network, their closed system. They, interestingly enough, do a lot of work for the government as well, and some agencies that do classified work. So they're able to have basically a closed network, so our content doesn't end up, specifically to your point, out for the world to see. But that was definitely a concern that we have. But the companies, I think, as I understand, are developing that capability to have these closed systems that are somewhat proprietary, but retain the capabilities that you would see with the publicly available systems.
Absolutely. You're going to see a trend here as we look at the large language models, ChatGPT, and obviously what they're doing is open and it's public. But, banks, especially with the data that's going into banks, they're not going to go and they have been, right? I mean, there's some banks that are still using servers in-house that are, you know, behind many layers of firewalls. And it's going to be the same thing with their large language models and their AI, however they implement it, in order to make sure that that data is protected. Because at the end of the day, across the world, everybody is dealing with data privacy, data security, and how that data is being used. So that trend has already started to happen. There are startup companies that are specifically you know, being built right now in order to basically build enterprise systems for the large language models. So that is, you know, a trend, and it will continue because the banks especially are at the far end of that sort of conservative approach, but trying to figure out how to use it themselves. Josh, any other thoughts on that? Obviously, you're in the tech space. Again, you know, some of the things you're seeing as it relates to maybe the ethics of, you know, what we're discussing here.
You know, something that's come up is making sure you're using your own materials, right? So that's really about copyright and the rights to use. So, you know, we just see people trying to be really careful in the same way that they would use stock imagery or video, right? Where you want to make sure you give credit where credit's due. And then, you know, as you're using AI to produce those different things, you know, where does that content come from? I think that's a whole landscape that probably needs to be figured out. So, you know, when in doubt, don't use other people's content is my advice, and craft your own. But, you know, where it's coming from behind the scenes in AI, I think probably needs more legislation from what I heard in an earlier similar conversation this morning.
Absolutely. All right. So we are coming up on the hour here. I do want to make sure that, you know, we have one final word from everybody as you're looking to the future. You know, what is the one thing that, you know, you are thinking about, you know, with AI and your organization? Maybe Rich, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's for us, for our association, and I'll focus on the business perspective. And again, it is how do we look at, you know, or being intentional of looking at all of the areas that we have, again, from and the things that we do, from, again, membership, certification, education, professional development, events, strategic planning, finance, accounting, human resources, and just ask the question again, because we're all, as we've talked here, we're all kind of new at this right now, and we need to be asking the question. Number one, how can this be integrated? How can this technology be integrated to either increase productivity or decrease cost, but ultimately, because we're in the association space, to increase member value. You know, we've got the advantage of being in the association space that it's purpose or mission over profit, and you know, I never want to lose sight of that member focus, and always have us look at this technology or the next one that's coming along. How can it improve that member experience and that member value? Because that's what we're here for.
Great, Josh. Final thoughts?
I think about mapping AI that you use towards your goals for your organization. So a lot of it's really interesting, but make sure you're getting the outcomes that you want. And I think that's about what Christina said earlier, seeing if it works. So maybe taking a look at those metrics, make sure that you can figure out what those are. Then you'll know if the AI is driving towards whatever that goal is, to make sure it's worth it. It could be as simple as saving the organization time, or as complex as driving towards, you know, certain, you know, membership numbers or revenue goals.
Right. Christina?
I'll plus one on what Josh said and just add that I think that a lot of this is going to come from the top. So I think that we, those of us who are in senior leadership positions on the senior leadership team, it will fall on our shoulders to set the culture and the goals, like what Josh is talking about, you know, with AI. So we need to know what it's doing. We need to know what's going on. So this is not a moment for ostrich head in the sand. This doesn't apply to me, or my marketing team will use it. No, you know, if you're a leader of an organization, you need to know what it can do so that you can guide your team.
Nikki?
Yeah, maybe Eric, just to say that we in fact, we don't know what associations are doing with AI today. And so we're all experimenting, we're all being asked. And in order to try and help guide associations, we're launching at ASAE on Sunday, a very simple association benchmark on associations' adoption of AI, really very, very quick pulse survey. So if anybody here is going to be at ASAE, do drop by and see us on our booth 531, and we can give you the QR code to that survey. Or maybe I'll talk with your team, Eric, after this meeting and see if you guys want to send out a link to everybody who participated today to join that survey, so we can see, just how associations are. We're asking simple questions like, what are you using AI for? If you're using it, is it content finance? Is it marketing? Is it membership? Is it engagement, etc.? So we hope it'll be a useful tool to guide associations around the world. It's not just the US associations, but we are starting it next week.
Great, thank you. And just final notes from Glue Up. Obviously, we ourselves are, working on this as well. We just launched our first AI tools about 2 weeks ago. And again, on the basic side, making sure the content can be written properly and better than what people were doing before. The conversations organizations like us are having, as we look at the member experience, as we look at recruitment of new members, these are kinds of things that, are going to come up as we have more time to build the larger features and bigger things that are going to impact associations across the board. And, extremely important conversations that we're having. And happy to engage anybody on those conversations as we move forward here, and any ideas that people have as well. There's a lot of learning for everybody, including technology organizations like us, and so we appreciate anybody's input in that. And final note, again, we are also going to be at ASAE. If anybody's going to be by, we are booth 452. So happy to have those conversations, and myself and my team will be there, and look forward to attending Nikki's presentation that she's making. But otherwise, see those folks, you guys who are going to Atlanta. We'll see you in Atlanta, and otherwise, we will see you guys hopefully soon. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody attending today, and thank you to Christina, Josh, Rich, and Nikki. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
See you in Atlanta.
Thanks.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.